says we're 101. Good afternoon, everyone. We're 101, so we're going to get this started. This is the Planning Advisory Committee for the Municipality of the County of Kings. Good afternoon, everyone. Oops. We're 101, so we're going to get this started. This is the... Okay, we're getting some feedback here. I don't need to hear myself twice. Okay, try this again. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Planning Advisory Committee for the Municipality of the County of Kings for Tuesday, September the 10th. I'm calling the meeting to order. We have a few regrets. Well, no, Kevin's here. So we have regrets from Kate Friars, one of our citizen members. We also have Councillor Allen is absent at the moment, but we haven't heard anything, so we'll assume that he is caught in traffic somewhere and is going to join us as soon as he can. So we have an agenda before us. Are there any amendments to that agenda? I see nothing, so I'll entertain a motion to approve. Councillor Davison, Mr. Morris, thank you. And if there's no discussion, I guess not. You can enter, oh my, you can enter your votes now, please, for on the approval of the agenda. Seems like forever since I've been here. Yep, good. Okay. So Councillor Davison is affirmative. Yes, thank you. So that is passed. And now that we have an approved agenda, this is an opportunity for any members of the committee to disclose any conflict of interest issues. And I see nothing, thank you. We also were sent the minutes from our July 9th, 2024 meeting. And if there's no errors or omissions noted or that you'd like to bring forward, I'll entertain a motion to approve those. Councillor Granger, Councillor Killam, thank you. And if there's no discussion or anything on that, you can enter your vote on that now. And is there any business arising from those minutes while we wait for that? That is approved. No business arising? Great. So we'll get right into the business at hand. The first thing is a motion to approve some citizen advisory or some advisory committee members from the village of Port Williams. And the motion on that reads: the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that the Municipal Council appoint Kimberly Cogswell and Louis Benedict to the Port Williams Area Advisory Committee for a one-year term beginning October 1, 2024, and Wade Knowles and Craig Newcomb for a two-year term beginning October 1st, 2024. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Davison, Councillor Killam, thank you. If there's no discussion on that, you can enter your votes now. And I apologize if I messed up anybody's name. And that is approved. Thank you very much. So the only other thing we have on our agenda today is an application to discharge an existing development agreement, and that file belongs to Ms. Bauman. And your mic is not on. Is on.
Thank
It's
you,
all
Madam
yours.
Chair. Hello, everyone. So as Madam Chair mentioned, we are here to discuss an application for a land use bylaw text amendment to permit existing uses in the Comprehensive Neighbourhood Development Zone, or R5 zone, and discharge of an existing development agreement. So this is the County of Kings, as we always see, and this is the location of our subject site. It is 1386 Lockhart Mountain Drive in Colebrook. So this application, as it is proposing a text amendment, If approved, that would apply county-wide, but the discharge of the development agreement applies to this specific site. So the proposal, as already discussed, is to discharge an existing development agreement which permits a personal horse operation on the site, and to add existing uses as a permitted use under the Comprehensive Neighbourhood Development Zone. So in 2008, a development agreement was registered on 1386 Lockhart Mountain Road, and that development agreement permitted a personal horse operation. So under that development agreement, a personal horse operation is defined as being buildings and outdoor areas used to shelter, raise, feed, and ride horses for the private use of the owner of the property, and includes the barns, megadome, stables, storage areas, paddocks, and grazing fields. So the applicant has requested to remove this development agreement from the site, which has prompted the application for a text amendment to permit existing uses under the R5 zone. So currently, the R5 zone permits agricultural uses and forestry uses as of right. At the moment, all other uses within the R5 zone are classified as non-conforming uses. So the proposed text amendment proposes to add existing uses to the list of permitted uses, if we proceed with the discharge of the development agreement, the existing uses on the site, which are the personal horse operation and the existing dwelling, would become non-conforming uses. So to avoid that, the proposed text amendment is before you. So in respect to the enabling policy, Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.2 states that Council shall amend the text of the land use bylaw provided the proposal meets the general criteria for amending the land use bylaw set out in section 5.3, development agreements and amending the land use bylaw. So section 5.3.7 states that Council shall be satisfied that the proposal to amend the land use bylaw or enter into a development agreement, point A, is consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy. Point B is not in conflict with any municipal or provincial programs, bylaws or regulations in effect in the municipality. And point C is not premature or inappropriate due to point I, the municipal or village costs related to the proposal. So in respect to point A, municipal planning strategy states that the intent of the R5 zone is set out in policy 3.1.2. And it states that Council shall establish the following residential loans in the land use bylaw, and in respect to the Comprehensive Neighbourhood Development Zone, it states that lands located in this zone are intended for integrated and comprehensive planning on new large-scale neighbourhoods by development agreement. Additional policies related to this zone are listed in policies 3.1.13 through 3.1.15. So policy 3.1.12 relates to uses allowed within the R5 zone. And it says that Council shall permit within the Comprehensive Neighbourhood Development R5 zone a limited amount of as-of-right development that is not expected to prevent future comprehensive development, including but not limited to forestry uses, agriculture, and limited expansion of existing uses. So on this map in front of us, the area outlined in purple is all of the R5 zoned land within the county. The R5 zone was introduced through the adoption of Bylaw 105, which is our municipal planning strategy, and Bylaw 106, which is our land use bylaw, in 2020. So the zone was generally applied to large areas of heavily vegetated land. There are a few exceptions to that, which would be ideal for development in the future. So there are a small number of existing uses, approximately 10 dwellings, the personal horse operation, and there is also a school. So those 12 uses are across 1,953 acres of land. So there is an existing development by development agreement within the Port Williams R5 zoning, which is the Steepleview Drive development as well. So that's not included in the original count. So this amendment would only allow for the expansion of existing uses, which would be the dwellings and potentially the school as well, within the confines of the regulations of the land use bylaw. This amendment proposed would not allow for new uses beyond the existing uses and would not allow for a proliferation of the existing uses. So as a result of that, staff are of the opinion that permitting the existing uses as of right would not ultimately reduce the land's ability for future comprehensive development. So further to this, policy 2.1.7 states that council shall permit in each of the growth areas a range of land uses that may include existing agricultural uses, residential uses, commercial uses, and industrial uses. So the municipal planning strategy provides room for existing uses to be permitted within our growth centres and within the R5 zone. So it's staff's opinion that the proposed text amendment would not undermine the ability for future comprehensive development in line with the intent of the MPS. So going back to policy 5.3.7 and point B, the proposed text amendment is not in conflict with any municipal or provincial programs, bylaws or regulations, and staff do not consider this proposal inappropriate as there would be no cost to the municipality as a result of this application. So we received a completed application and a public information meeting was held on the 30th of April. The meeting held did actually consider two separate applications, and there were 10 members of the public in attendance, and as well as the applicants. Prior to the meeting, letters were sent to 62 of the neighbouring properties, as well as a notice being placed in the newspaper. During the public information meeting, there was one question of clarification raised, but no concerns were raised with the proposed discharge of the development agreement or with the text amendment. Post the public information meeting, we did receive 2 phone calls and 2 emails, again asking questions of clarification, mainly relating to potential future development or subdivision, but nothing was raised in concern in respect to the text amendment or the proposed discharge of the development agreement. So today we are here at the Planning Advisory Committee, and further to that, the Planning Advisory Committee will put forward a recommendation at first reading to the full Municipal Council. Following first reading, we have a public hearing, which once again prior to the hearing, neighbours will be sent notification of the public hearing, as well as a notice going in the newspaper. Following the public hearing, the full Municipal Council will make some form of recommendation, and then following that decision, there is a 14-day appeal period. So, staff are recommending that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council give first reading to and approve a public hearing for the amendments to the text of the land use bylaw to add existing uses as a permitted use under the Comprehensive Neighbourhood Development Zone or R5 zone, as described in Appendix B of the report dated September 10th, 2024. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No questions? Okay. Oh,
I think
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I just wanted to know, I don't really know what a personal horse operation is, so what does that actually mean?
Through you, Madam Chair. So this was quite an interesting site with a bit of history involved in it. But effectively, we didn't have a use that fully determined what the land use of this site was. So a new one was defined, and that would be the personal horse operation. So as I mentioned earlier, it's effectively encompassing all the built form on the site that relates to keeping, feeding, and raising horses on the land for private use by the owner.
So does that also include like an equestrian tent like they had before?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there is a fairly sizable dome that covers an outdoor area, presumably where they would lead and ride the horses. They also have a paddock there as well, where they could have the horses.
Can they add more?
The development agreement does not specifically state a maximum number of horses, but the intent is that it is for the private use by the owner, so they wouldn't be boarding other people's horses or, I'm sorry, I'm not a horse person, but it's intended to have the horses on the land used by the owner and kept by the owner, not external parties coming to the site to use the horses per se.
And Madam Chair, if I may? It's, so the edge of the property is on the growth center fringe, like part of it. So how would that, because doesn't a growth center have a different zoning than everything else?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is quite an interesting site in that it is covered by 4 different zones.
Right.
And it also extends beyond the boundary of the growth centre. So the growth centre boundary chops straight through it east to west. And so on one side, well, the portion of the site that is internal to the growth centre is covered by the, most of it is covered by the R5 zone. There's also a section covered by the residential 1 and 2 unit zone, and then there's also a section, I think it's the R3 zone from memory. I do have it on one of my slides. And then the site, or the portion of the site that's external to the growth area is covered by the A2 zone. So there's quite a bit going on in that respect. But the portion of the site that is covered by the development agreement, because it's only kind of a central blob, it doesn't cover the entirety of the site. It's all within the the R5 and the R2 zone.
Okay. And if I may, one more? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It actually relates back to your first question, just to clarify on the personal use. When we're talking about that, in this case, it's very specific, and which is why we're adding the existing use for a couple of different reasons. One, within the growth center, we don't permit what we call livestock uses, so normally horses would not be permitted. That goes back a little bit to the back history of this property having a development agreement to permit that for their own use. So a new use was created specifically for the DA. By discharging, the thought is by adding existing uses, they were there legally, and that's a condition of meeting that definition of existing. If you're illegal, you can't be existing, you're just illegal. So if we determine a use is legal and existing, you're able to continue what you're doing. So having the horses for their own use would be the limitation. No commercial component to that would be permitted on the property. I just wanted to throw that out. Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, one more. The environmentally sensitive areas, how do they keep staying protected in this?
Through you, Madam Chair, so we're not proposing any zoning changes through this application. It's simply a removal of an existing development agreement, which has led to the proposed text amendment. So the permitted uses do not impact the zoning or the protected areas per se.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
A heck of a time with this. Yeah, I just, this one's sort of throwing me. Was there any other questions before I weigh in? I don't understand why, somebody needs to explain to me why we need to take the development agreement off if it's suiting them now.
Yeah.
What is it that they want to do that they can't do with a development agreement on there that they can do if we do it R5?
Mm-hmm. So my understanding is that the owner of the property is quite elderly and she's looking to, I guess, plan for the future. As a result of that, she has expressed an intention in wanting to subdivide the land in order to be able to deed it to multiple of her children. The development agreement prohibits the subdivision in the way she wants to do it. It effectively says that you can subdivide the land that is under the development agreement, but won't allow for it to be chopped up into pieces the way she wants to do it in order to deed it to her children. So that is the reason for the proposed removal of the development agreement.
Okay. All right, that explains that. So when we write in existing uses, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the fact that it doesn't open it up to a whole bunch of other things. So, Laura, everybody's weighing in now.
Laura can go.
Look out. The lights are going on now. Okay. Ms. Mosher.
Through you, to yourself. So when it says existing uses, those uses need to have been there on the date that the bylaw was adopted by council, so November 21st, 2019. The existing uses can expand, but because there's a residential use there now, doesn't mean that we could add a whole bunch more residential uses. It would be limited to that one house. So anything that's there now can stay, but additional large-scale development without a development agreement would not be permitted. So the only permitted uses in this zone are agricultural uses, forestry uses, and we're looking to add the existing uses, which are currently a handful of houses, and the school, which, because it's under provincial ownership, it can do what it wants anyways.
And I understand what you're saying about this specific property, but as Perry said in her preamble when she started this, is by putting existing uses in there, then this applies to all R5s. So what else is out there in the R5 zone that exists now that maybe we don't even know about? And
it has to be there legally. So if we don't know about it, chances are good it's not there legally. It would be illegal. So it doesn't have those protections. So it would only be the handful of houses that Perry reviewed with us, and then the school in Greenwood.
okay. Okay. Councillor Granger, you had something else?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Because there was something constructed without a permit a while ago, and the actual structure got to stay, my thought would be that because that was allowed to happen, perhaps they may take a little bit more leeway with what they're doing on the land. Is there any way that will be monitored?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have planning enforcement and building enforcement and such. So at the moment, they are bound by the terms of the legal agreement. If we proceed, they are classified as an existing use. So that would have the same parameters as the development agreement, and we could enforce that if they were expanding beyond that without
How would
consent.
you find out?
The majority of planning is based on faith. So we deal with things until we find out that that's not how it's occurring, and that's when our enforcement team come into play.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, still nothing? You guys have? Okay. I just have one more.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we have, okay, we take the development agreement off, and this owner goes about subdividing the property. Why do we have to put existing uses in there? If she's going to subdivide it anyway, what does adding existing uses, how does that benefit her in subdividing this property? Because if we just take the development agreement off, she could go ahead and hopefully subdivide it the way she chose. And why do we need to put the existing uses in there? Why don't we just take the development agreement off and see where that lands?
Mm-hmm. So it's not so much in respect to the subdivision of part of the application, it's in relation to the use portion of the application. So if we were to remove the development agreement, you're correct in that they could proceed through a subdivision application as they wished. It would be that the existing use in the dwelling on the land and the personal horse operation would be then classified as non-conforming uses. And so my understanding is through the implementation of our current land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy, everything was put together in a way that we could avoid creating new non-conforming uses. My understanding is that in future, if they wanted to expand the dwelling, for example, beyond 25%, they would need a new development agreement to do that. So in some respects, we are trying to avoid the need for further development agreements in the future for a house on the land. Does that kind of answer your question?
Sort of. Okay. Go ahead, Trish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps the only other thing I could add is the Municipal Government Act talks about non-conforming, and it is a hardship for a property owner to get that title or that stigma attached to their property. Non-conforming properties have in the past had trouble getting mortgages. Certainly there is an exceptional hardship on the property should any of those buildings, if they are non-conforming, be destroyed by fire. Now it becomes a very difficult, even for the home, a very difficult process for that property owner to rebuild. It's not quite as easy. The MGA requires a whole other process in terms of if the building is destroyed greater than 75% above foundation, you can't rebuild. So there's a lot of hurdles that we really were hoping to avoid on behalf of the property owner, given the situation. The house is there. There are other limitations within the land use bylaw that control the expansion. The DA requirement for all new structures will also control that future development.
Okay. Councillor Granger?
Yes, me again. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask if we determined that we didn't want to put a DA in there, could this, because there's so many different zones, could they potentially still do what they wanted to do within each little zone that's on this property?
Through you, Madam Chair. So at the moment, they could undertake the subdivision portion of it based on the current zoning. The uses is more where we run into problems. So when the dwelling was built, the site was under a previous zoning, which was probably the equivalent of the R2 zone. So at that point in time, it was legal to develop a dwelling regardless of the separate issue of the horse dome and the personal horse use. Because the zoning has changed and is now under the R5 zone where the house is located on the site, it is no longer a permitted use, which is where the non-conforming use status would come into play, and we're trying to now allow it to be permitted as of right under the R5 zone. Sorry, I've forgotten what the question was. Apologies.
If we decided that a DA wasn't going to be permitted,
Yeah.
would they be able, because there's like so many zones on this, could they potentially still kind of do what they want to do within each zone?
So again, going back to what I mentioned before, my understanding is that the owner would like to separate the property into different parcels so that she can deed it to her children. So it wouldn't necessarily prevent her children, depending on which parcel they got, from building on the land in the future. But at the moment, I guess she'd have to pick up her house and move it to a different part of the land if she wanted it to be allowed as a non-conforming use. I hope that makes sense.
Ms. Mosher?
Thank you. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Granger. So the application only pertains to the portion of the property that's in the R5 zone. So the other parts of the property still benefit from all of the benefits and advantages and restrictions of the other zones. So it really just depends on what is to be developed where, but this will enable the existing dwelling to remain compliant with the land use bylaw following the discharge of the DA.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Since Councillor Granger and I have no further questions. Can you put the motion back up for me, please?
Ooh, went too far. Apologies.
Probably got it here.
It's going to make you go through the whole thing again.
Okay, so Ms. Bauer read it in. I'll read it again. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council give first reading to and approve a public hearing for amendments to the text of the land use bylaw to add existing uses as a permitted use under the Comprehensive Neighborhood Development R5 zone as described in Appendix B of the report dated September 10, 2024. Do I have a mover? Mr. Morris? Councillor Killam, thank you. Is there any discussion? Councillor Granger? Oh, your lights are, it was on.
I won't
Go
play
ahead.
with it.
You're all right.
Thank you. I'm glad that this is going to go to council so that there's more eyes on it. I read this and reread this, and I'm not quite sure if I completely understand it, just to be clear. So it will be great to have all of council having a good look at it, and maybe we can kind of dissect it a little bit more together.
Yep, and I'm sure staff, if you have any questions,
Definitely.
you can
Thank
always
you.
get in touch with staff before it comes before council. So, any other discussion or questions? No? All right, so I'll call the question. You can register your vote on this now. And that's passed, thank you. So the motion to discharge the development agreement, that only goes to council, correct? That's not our purview. Okay, great. So that was the only piece of business that we have, unless anyone has anything else to bring forward? Nope, okay. Our next meeting is October the 8th, Tuesday, October the 8th in these chambers. And we have no members of the public with us today, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Davison, Mr. Morris, thank you. And I don't think anybody's going to argue, so you can register your vote now. Ah, okay. Thank you very much. And I understand that we have Lorianne coming back to work with us. We may not be here long enough to truly enjoy that, but welcome back. Thank you all.